care of that again. All right. Hello. Welcome to the Roach Crossing Weekly General Livestream, April 28th, 2022. It is very warm in this room, but I have a window open, and as I close the shade. And here we are. Another day, another week. We seem to finally be entering actual spring, as despite the fact that we had a frost last night, and it is, check the weather stats, 53 out and was 40 out earlier. Seems we are on the good up and up. Good morning, Smack, and anyone else who is joining currently. Yeah, so it looks like we're going to bounce back up into the 60s, 70s next week, which I think that's our final break in the weather. Hello, Madison. So let's see, what am I doing right now? I figure maybe I'll buy some time for some more folks to pop up in the chat as I look for something. I am looking for, currently, and I'm prowling Amazon, eBay to see if there's any independent sellers. Coconut shell halves. Yes, we are getting the weird weather too, and hopefully that will not be an issue pretty soon with the warmth next week, and hopefully for the rest of the seasons. So, but yeah, I'm currently trying to find good pricing. Here's some 4 half coconut shell with fiber with broken English. Free delivery May 4th through 6th. This is a 4-pack. And yeah, if I could find them for a bit cheap. Taj Muma. Hello, Taj. How do you have belted springtails, and how do you care for them? That is a wonderful thing for somebody to ask. And Madison, I would love if you were to ask family members if they have any coconuts laying around. I need a lot of halves, and it's seeming like so far, with the pricing I'm looking at online, it's just more worth it for me to buy coconuts from the grocery store for $2 each, pick them, eat them, and then use the shells. So that's probably what I'm going to end up doing, probably going and buying a bunch of coconuts and then feeding them to various things. But Taj, if I'm saying it right, Taj, if you stick around, I'm actually going to touch on some Springtail stuff because I did a lot of that today. And so the short answer is yes, I am breeding Orcacella Quinta. They are not available, and I will go into their care in a little bit, perhaps when I go into a more in-depth discussion about things, because today was very much so a Springtail day, among other things. So I am just sitting here enjoying some homemade cornbread and some orange juice, although it looks very yellow in that light. Looking around to see if there's anything of important note to bring up. Again, as I sort of buy some time waiting for some more folks to trickle in. So I did a big email clear a couple days ago, as I had said, already due for another one. So that will probably be, that'll be on the docket for tomorrow, is going through and clearing out the inbox once more and continuing to stay on top of things, as the bug room, my assistant, who you'd probably find with being named Christian, has does an excellent job at tidying up and has been taking care of the bulk of containers and stuff as I go through. So a while back in one of the chats, this is just one of the many things that's going on right now. I had mentioned how I was. Why am I stuck in place? Mentioned how I was going through. I got all these containers made here a couple months ago. Hello, Chain. I don't know if you got the shipping notification. You probably did, but your order was shipped earlier this week. Just thought I would say that. Oh, I did have to say, for some reason, the sei, I think it's because I haven't replaced the fruit flies in the enclosure for a while. The sei were not as numerous as they usually are. So I think I sent 2 less sei and 3 to 4 more Lecontii with your order, just letting you know. Anyways, so I had said before that I'd gone through the trouble of making all these enclosures to be able to take care of some special and needier things more easily. And I did a bunch of critter keepers and then swiftly realized that I wanted to do watering ports on the side of everything because things can go. I can stockpile food in the containers and not have to worry about them for very long periods of time as long as they're given a gentle mist. And so the watering ports helps make that easy because I don't have to unstack everything. And so I realized that, I made all these wonderful containers, but I didn't put watering ports on them because that came after that. So I've been going through and moving things into watering ported containers, which is, it's not as, some things have been worse than others, like catching Latiblatel is always a pain, but a lot of the colonies were smaller tobiids, so they've established colonies in the containers so I can just go and move, like 50 adults instead of having to fish through 100 nymphs and, hope that I'm not messing up sex ratios or like, I don't know, that I'm not getting enough, that I'm not going to be able to establish enough to meet demand fast enough. So it's been nice with respect to that I have enough things that I can sort of get the majority of individuals and get the colony back on its feet very quickly, and then just sort of sterilize the rest of the container and then wash it out and reuse it. So that's what I've been up to, chipping away. I've got pretty much all of that layer right there done. We'll need to get those Tyrannochellophyr, but I think we both talked about me keeping them instead. And the Glauturix I need to do, but the thing is, I feel bad because the Glauturix colony is doing so well. There's like a couple hundred, more than a couple hundred, maybe like 500 in there, which is the best I've ever done with them, and they continue to do well. But to move them, there's no way I'm getting every single nymph out of the substrate there, and it's too much of a pain to move the substrate to a container that already has a barrier put on it because it'll mess the barrier up. And so I'm going to have to catch as many as I can and cut my losses and euthanize the rest of them, or just sterilize the whole container, which makes me feel bad because I do really like that species and I don't want to have to do that. But for the future, making it easier to take care of them, I have to. So I'll just reward them by putting another piece of bark in there so they can infest it right quickly. What else? Dog. Just gonna wait until a couple roachy folks got in here to report on some roaches, because I finally, for the first time since March, did husbandry on roaches, and overall things are looking great, and I'm very happy about that, and I'm very proud that my setups are working as I intended them to do, where I can, if necessary, I can take very long periods of time without taking in-depth care of things, and everything still does very well. So I'm quite happy about that. There have been a couple of setbacks, though, but I'll wait a little bit to talk about that. Hello, Hylas. Good to see you. I love seeing regulars. I appreciate people coming in and spending time in the stream. This sort of once a week thing that I initially thought I would kind of dread, in the sense that I'd have an obligation every week, and I thought, I'd be too busy, or like, what if I'm too busy a week, or what if this is happening a week? And it's actually been a lot more enjoyable to have something to look forward to and sort of rip me away from work, which I can get a little too involved in sometimes. So I'm gonna lower this just a little bit. And Victor's outside howling because he can't see me. Hello, Evan. Good to see you. Hylas, your name reminds me that I'll bring again. I may want to wait on a couple of these things, but oh well. People will be rewatching this. Yeah, thank you for stopping in. I hope your finals go well. Poor baby outside. What was I going to say? Hylas' name reminds me that. So my Phidippus regius supplier, who's probably the Phidippus regius supplier for everyone else in the United States, has told me that he is going to be regius are becoming harder to find, not at spots that he's already been to, but it's just harder for him to find new spots that have populations that he can collect a good number from without damaging the population. And so the days of relatively inexpensive Phidippus regius, at least at Roach Crossing, may be coming to an end. And with that being said, it's very likely that prices will start to skyrocket everywhere else from people who are producing them or who are getting them, raising slings and selling them or selling adults. So keep that in mind. With that being said, I have started to take precautions and take measures to begin captive producing regius. And so that's starting here now, which is something I didn't really want to have to do because it is a fair amount of work, but at the same time, regius have been a very popular thing on Roach Crossing. And so I feel as though I must, and again, more in line with my goals of captive producing things over collecting wild caughts, but I do also have the policy of helping out other fellow bug people, especially people who are doing it for a living. And so that's why I do stock things that are sustainably collected where I can. The other thing about regius, though, is that they are a relatively R-selected species in that they do produce so many brood and multiple sexes per female, and females are long-lived in the wild. So I've never been extremely concerned about depleting the wild populations in that respect. But my collector wouldn't collect females that were sitting with sacs, wouldn't collect sacs, and wouldn't collect at certain times of the year. So I didn't feel bad about them being harvested. And of course, from various remote but still accessible places. So it's not like there's, the whole population is going to tank or something like that from collecting. But I suppose if a bunch of people went out and did it, but it's primarily this one individual, and he's been doing it for a very long time. But there's been just this uptick in the interest and then the demand, and then most of his as I understand, most of his sales in the last couple of years have switched from various Florida invertebrates to surprisingly providing feeder lizards. He basically is a feeder anole collector full time, collecting brown anoles to supply everybody. So basically anybody who has brown anoles, with a couple exceptions. There are a couple other people who do that out in Florida, but I know that he's very tapped in and supplies quite a bit of that market of things. So it's also, even though regius are they wholesale in his book for more, it's just so easy to go out and collect brown anoles by the thousands. That's more, and to go out and just do that for a night or an evening, that it's more worth his time to just do that than to even go after regius sometimes. So with that being said, I do have, again, I've been building a stockpile, and this last set that I got in was from Sumter County, so I do have locality stock. But also among them slipped in a Phidippus otiosus. And I was quite captivated with it because of the yellowy coloration. And Alan informed me last night that Odiosus and Regius hybridize very readily in the wild in Florida, and to the point where how many Regius traits are strictly Regius and how many Odiosus traits are strictly Odious in those sort of places. I could definitely see how the grayer female Regius could have heavy Odiosus influence in them. But anyways, this particular individual has very strong Odiosus because of that, the yellowish setae on the legs and whatnot, and so it produced a sac, and I will be raising those up and perhaps making them available on the Regius page, or making a separate page for them. I don't know if I'll do that because I need to see how easy they are relative to Regius to rear up. So that's one thing that's sort of going on. They are very pretty. In a way, I kind of like it more than Regius, but only because I see so many Regius when I get shipments in, that to see one that's very different. I mean, there's plenty of pretty Regius in all kinds of different colors, but to see this Odiosus individual with the yellow among it is quite among tons of others that are black and gray and white and pinkish. It's nice to see the yellow. It really sticks out. Basically, it looks very unique when there's 100 other spiders, and this one's different. So bronze jumpers, you say, Hylas? Let me see what those look like. Yeah, those are quite pretty. There's one that I see very infrequently in Michigan that I would love to breed. The Mevia inclemens, the dimorphic jumping spider, with the one male that has the like triple mohawk going on. I think I've only seen maybe 2 or 3 males of them in my life, but I don't have an eye for what the females look like. So I may have, even if I've seen pictures of them and I have a vague idea of it, I've never gone out looking exclusively for them or been in an area where they were abundant enough for me to sort of put the 2 and 2 together in terms of search image and jumping spiders that I see. Mevia inclemens is the species of jumper, a dimorphic jumping spider. So I think they're quite pretty, especially the males. The fact that there's 2 different phases of males, and the one you can't really beat is just black body, black pedipalps, black abdomen, triple mohawk thing going on, and then the legs are yellow or white. It's just a very pretty spider, especially considering that the female and the other male possibility are quite drab looking. Not saying that in a bad way, just saying relative to saying relative to the guy who's the guy who's got the triple punk rock mohawk going on. So I'll might as well type it in here. Mevia inclemens. So yeah, let's see. We've got a couple more people. I'm not quite sure who is here, but I guess I can start touching on some more in some more other things that are some goings-ons and whatnot. I should also say that this will not be a long live stream, not because I'm particularly tired or excessively busy, as I usually say. But at about 8:30-ish, there is a person in Canada that I have been working with who is importing various bugs, and let me sip the orange juice. And I have to do a FaceTime Zoom or whatever meeting to hammer out some of the details, since he had some bugs shipped to me here and he wants to get some things from me as well. And so we need to coordinate a time, date, place for us to meet up. So I will be meeting him here stateside, or meeting somebody who's representing him or whatever here stateside. And apparently it's actually kind of easy to legally get things, to get bugs into Canada if they're on this or off of or on the certain list. And I've had a couple of what's the word I'm looking here? Officials from Canada who have emailed me asking if I was involved with these various things, because there are people who are applying for permits to get stock from me, and they wanted to make sure that everything was, that I was aware of everything and that the other person was aware of everything and all this other stuff. So hi, Chris Snyder. Good to see you. Oh, we can talk about some things, Chris. Yeah, Phidippus audax is fairly common here as well, too. The only thing about audaxes, from my experiences working with them when I was younger, is when they get around subadult or close to it, they seem to need a cold diapause or they need some sort of diapause, at least the ones here in Michigan do, to get them to mature. So I don't like having to work. I don't want to have to work with that with a spider. I have enough of it with various insects, and to raise a sustainable population of audax in captivity would mean lots of individual containers, which is not entirely my preference. So yeah, actually, Chris, since you're here, I had something I wanted to talk to you about specifically. We had a lot of things in an email that we were going back and forth on. Yeah, so I for the working on stuff on the website, things that I think I will push to be done until I move, so it can all sort of be done at once at the future facility and whatnot. I think Victor seems to want my attention. I might go see him in a second. So actually, on that note, there's been somebody's dog from down the street has been getting out, and it's a smaller dog. It's like maybe a pit lab mix. And anytime that Victor sees it, he does not like it walking in our front yard, as he is not supposed to. And so sometimes when he gets a little bit more involved in the barking nowadays, it's because that dog is out again. So, but anyways, so I'm glad I don't live in the north. Hello, Alan. So yes, Chris. So a lot of the major stuff, like the overall structural rehaul and categorizations and stuff, I think will be a candidate for after I move out and have the facility and funds and patience to work on that again. So I'm thinking that would probably be a late 2023, early 2024 thing. However, something I would like to work on right now, and I have no idea where to start, is search engine optimization, because I know the algorithm is favoring the dubia roach propagators when looking up roaches for sale and whatnot. But there are a couple of other results that are a little lacking above my own. As in, if I were to go there myself looking to purchase roaches, I would be quite disappointed with the availability and selection as it has been over the last couple of years. So if there is any way to work on search engine optimization, that I feel is my strongest priority, because of course that will bring in more funds, which enables more fun things and will expedite the moving process. I should go see what the dog wants. So, all right, chair stream. I will be back in a moment. All right. Okay. Encryption is pretty important these days. I have no idea what the live chat reaction. I have no idea what any of that means. I am aware that there is a pay to win aspect of SEO type stuff, but I don't know how I do that per se. I need to do a blog post tomorrow. I can do that during emails. After that, there's some really good WordPress modules, says Chris. Chain looking for common silverfish. Surprisingly, no luck. Anyway, to buy some lepismanidee. Chain, you, me, Alan, Dr. Appel, and a lot of other people have a real problem finding and keeping silverfish. Something in captivity is just lacking in terms of husbandry and a lot of other things. There's been long-term cultures of lepisma and Alan, I can't remember what else is being kept at Auburn that I can't remember if you guys still have it or not. But yeah, I would like to throw my hat in the ring. The only problem is you can come and catch silverfish in my bathroom. I would love some bathroom silverfish, Chris. I am going to end up going to my parents' house and looking around the garage for some lined silverfish. I bred them when I was a wee greenhorn at keeping bugs. I produced larvae from one female, or not larvae, they're nymphs, from one female, and raised them up a good amount, but I just couldn't get them to propagate again after that. And it was weird. I think it was the perfect storm. I had them in a small container. They were getting frequent care. It was relatively dry, so the frequent care of just very gentle, very extremely light mistings. I think that they really like high ventilation. They will just die in a stuffy setup, and they just won't breed in too dry of a setup. So it's really with their egg selection sites, and among other things, they must be extremely choosy and whatnot. So, I would also the problem also is in term for me and for you, I guess too, is actually getting the stock to start with, collecting enough of them. So yeah. Also, let me say hi to anybody else in here. Michael Hare, good to see you again. Good evening to you as well. But yeah, I wish if I could get a dozen lepisma or Satena I think I'd have a pretty good shot at breeding them now with my current facets of bug experience. I think I have a pretty good shot at getting colonies started, but again, I need to get a small starter group of them, and onesie twosie is not going to do it. And I have collected some silverfish. I collected some in Alabama with Alan, one of the wild genera, from underneath standing trees, under bark, and in wood. I haven't actually set them up yet. They're on very low priority because I don't know if I'm going to do well with them. Like it's a crapshoot, and I lean more towards, oh yeah, I'm not going to do very well with these. So why would I set these up over, something like an Echinoptera or something else that I know I have a very good chance of getting established, and that I should put the time into immediately. So just put them on the back burner, and they were still alive the last I checked on them. But yes, I would really love to get any of the pest silverfish and give them a go, because I've spent a long time, and I do extremely well with fire brats, and fire brats are just so much more dryness and whatnot tolerant than all of those, all the different silverfish, it seems. So, but I have that framework of, okay, this works for one of their relatives. How can I vary this enclosure to make it work for these other ones? What's the common factor that both of these seem to need, and then sort of work off of that to develop a deviated husbandry there. So let's see. Okay, it's jumping off of that. That's a good conversation. If anybody here, Chris, again, if you find silverfish and you find a good group of them, let me know, because I would like to work with them. No matter what species you're finding, because if there's Tenolopisma or Lepisma, I would love to give them a go. Lepisma are just so cute, and I wish I could get another group of like 7 or whatever. Alan, I can't remember seeing the silverfish colony at Auburn. I'll have to pester you or Dr. Pell and see if there's ever any to spare. So, things I was going to talk about today. Big things, semi-big things, not so big things. Yes, right. It's not silverfish. Mixing up all my bugs today. It's so shameful. If Taj is still here, they were hidden from you, so you don't pester me for them. Well, too late. I'll ask Dr. Pell and tell him that I will swap you guys some Gyna or some other species you want, and then you will have to begrudgingly go and collect some of them. Well, if I go back out to Big Pine Key, it's not going to be Tenolopisma or Lepisma, and I feel like I gave my best effort at breeding those huge ones from the Keys and didn't get anything out of it, and so I feel very little motivation to try that again anytime in the near future. But the pest ones I've never had the opportunity to have a really good, strong start with those, like I haven't within the last 3 years. So it's more motivation to prioritize working with something that I know is going to be a little bit easier, even if it's still hard. So silverfish, I did it again. Springtails. I had an opportunity to sneak out and restart and refresh some of my springtail colonies today, because the weather, even though it was in the 40s, there's no snow. It hasn't rained recently, so things are relatively dry. And where else is it going? Oh, and the sun was making, the radiation from the sun was making it feel a lot warmer than it actually was. So I was able to go out and collect some springtails and have, since I do this every couple of months, look for new stuff or just to see what's in the soil, kind of keep tabs on when things have sort of blooms and when things have sort of troughs in their populations, and realizing a lot of springtails are very cyclical. There are very few species that I can find a lot of all of the time. One of those is the species that TJ, I'll look through and read what you just wrote in a second here. I'm still having trouble committing it to memory. That one springtail that we talked about before, I want to say not Canada is in the Latin. I'll look it up on Bug Guide now that I remember what it looks like. It's very common. It ranges all the way down to Central America. I got to get it. Hamidia socia. Hamidia socia is a very common springtail all times of the year, many different places around here, and that they do fairly well in captivity, even when conditions start to sway beyond a preferred equilibrium, unlike some other species where they will just crash very abruptly if things go wrong, like Lepidostris. So the Hamidia socia, I collected another starter set of those Tomasaurus vulgaris. I'm assuming they're vulgaris because they're from the same location that Will and I collected the vulgaris that we identified. So, I know minor and vulgaris are mixed in together. But if you have a mixed culture of vulgaris and minor, like you're kind of screwed because if they were both added there initially, you're probably going to end up with 1-to-1 ratio for the rest of eternity, and you'd have to pick out like 10. Look at them all under the scope and make sure they all didn't have the little appendage or whatever on the fulcrum or whatever it is. So restarted Tomasaurus vulgaris, isotoma, CF isotoma delta. I feel like the isotomas, or at least whatever this species is more of a cold weather species, because I noticed there's a lot of them in fall. There's a lot of them through the winter. And now it seems like their numbers are starting to dwindle because I only found about 10 of them. So, but a species that has been absent for the last 8 months that I found a good group of, is Orcacella Quinta. So I was able to restart my colony of those after I lost a lot of springtail colonies because I had a genius idea in the summer when I was keeping them again to build a desiccation chamber, because in my experience, a lot of springtails don't do well with stagnant, humid air. And so during the summertime, when that's the default here, I would lose a lot of my fancy species because the air humidity would go up. And either, at first I thought it was a hypoaspis or whatever the current genus is named, mites that would get into the containers and, decimate them. But not this winter, but the winter before, when I had really big colonies of all my springtail species, some of those mites got into the Tomasaurus culture, and I was like, oh boy, here we go. This is what happens during the summertime, but now it's happening in February, and so this colony is definitely going to be screwed. And there's a huge bloom of them, and the springtail population was not affected at all. And I was just like, huh. And that's when, the piece of the puzzle really fit together, was that, it's the air humidity. They either just don't like to be stuffy, or it causes the wrong type of bacteria or something. There's something about the air humidity going up these springtails really don't like, especially in the cups that I house them in. And they're very well ventilated cups. So whatever it is, the tie-in of factors there. So yeah, I restarted my Orcacella Quinta, and again with all these, because they grow so quickly, I wouldn't be surprised if within a month I had them available. And at this point, I'm doing a really good job catching up to where the collection was pre-losing a bunch of stuff. There's some Entomobria from my parents' house I need to collect, or probably Entomobria. Orcacella villosa. That I need to find. Usually I can find those at the local park, but I went and checked and I couldn't find any today. I think it was too moist. There are a couple of other places I can go and check for those, including one where they were the dominant springtail, but it's a bit of a drive. I might go and do that next week, though, if I really have to, because I really do want villosa again. Entomobria, Grycio olivata. I was very upset that I lost that colony. It popped up in my garter snake bin. My garter snake tank in the living room, not this winter, but the winter before, was very easy to culture, and then died out, I think, in there, but also, but then the actual culture of them died out, and then I restarted them again last fall. And I think I've talked about this before, how I had labia minor earwigs in with them, and they seemed to do very well together because the earwigs weren't eating them. So, but I went out to look for more Grycio olivata, realized that the boards that I had found them under are the boards that I used to cover my guinea pig enclosures, and so I had lifted them off the ground, so there were no Entomobria to be found. So they're in the yard. I'll probably find them again some point during the summer. I'll probably put down some more boards and put some more hay under it so that it gets a little bit moldy and the ants move up under it and the labia minor come back and all that stuff. But I'm hopeful that I'll find them again. They were very, very, very easy to culture. And again, the thing I had started talking about at the beginning of this little spiel was that I had made the desiccation chamber. Winter came, but I got very nervous and anxious about turning the desiccator off too soon, because I was like, oh well, they're gonna crash. They'll crash harder if they're too moist than if they're too dry. And so I just left all of the containers inside of the desiccating chamber, and it continued to desiccate. And then I didn't change out the water thing so that it began to hydrate. And so the thing that I had feared happening ended up happening in a really weird roundabout way. And so the bin got overly saturated with humidity and everything died out. So I had to restart from scratch. I had to get the Beetles Springtails from Will. And TJ, again, I'm going to go back up and read through things, but I believe that the Entomobria unostrigata that you sent me, the colony you shipped didn't make it, but in something else you sent me, there were a couple of individuals that's obviously slipped my watchful eye. I think it was probably the Plectoptera. And they have been colonizing, hopping to and fro in the enclosures up there. And so there's this beautiful rainbow Springtails, actually, of Sinella curvicida, or whatever they really are. Sinella curvicida, Willosia buscae, and Entomobria unostrigata. So it's a nice rainbow of different colors. But I picked some of them out to get a pure culture going as best as I can. And so hopefully that'll be good. Oh, that reminds me. Your Willosia from CF Willosia from Kota Kinabalu are up there, and I need to put those with the other Springtails. Yeah, I need to move these from this high shelf into somewhere. The sun! To move these from the high shelf into somewhere else. I think I put them up there because I didn't have the future desiccation chamber ready. Also, I went out and bought electronic hygrometer, thermometer thing from Menards. Ooh, that makes my mouth look weird. And so that will be put in, and it has an alarm as well. So that's going into the desiccation chamber. And I figured that right now the room humidity, well, before I had the window open, was the perfect humidity for maintaining springtail cultures. On my hygrometer, my non-digital hygrometer in the bug room currently reads about 51% relative humidity. So I had to find a conversion between whatever that is, because it's obviously less accurate, and the electric hygrometer. The electric hygrometer is saying it's about 31 or 33% relative humidity, which is really, really low, which explains a lot of things. But now I have a conversion between the two of those, because I took a measurement with them both in the same place after they'd equilibrated. So I know the conversion now between the two of them. So that's the perfect humidity. So that's what I'm aiming for in the desiccation chamber when the air humidity starts to rise in the house for the summer. So with all that being said, there's also a striped Entomobria in my front yard that I have to collect again. I went out looking for them. They seem to be in leaf litter piles, but I couldn't actually find them. They were kind of uncommon to find last spring. But again, those Hamidiosocea are just everywhere. They're the dominant springtail in the front yard, at least in the O or A horizon, whichever one's the leaf litter, the bottom of the leaf litter layer. And so I feel like there might be some competition there. Or it could be that they do very well with whatever predators are out there, and that might explain why they're the most common compared to everything else. Because it is definitely an ecosystem constantly changing and morphing out in the front with the different plants and whatnot that has been that I've been introducing out there. Let me scroll up and touch on some things. So TJ says that he found hatchlings in his Eupolyphagus sinensis white-eye. Excellent. And your Eucharidia linglong pairs have matured. That would be wonderful for both of those. I haven't, for some reason, my sinensis colony, last winter they were doing really well. I was keeping them in with Paraplaneta brunea, And then the Brunea started to crash because of whatever Alan and I have going on with them. Those were Brunea from Brandon, Maines. And the Eupolyphaga, I removed them to another enclosure, and then their population has just sort of been like since then. So I might try keeping another roach in with them. Maybe they were eating the poop or something else is going on, because they were having so many babies in with those Brunea. Chris Snyder, has anyone used a trap that was effective to live trap silverfish? I don't think that's an idea that has crossed anybody's mind. However, I have noticed in my parents' garage, when I was keeping my plastic containers out there, that occasionally I would find silverfish that would fall in and get stuck because they can't climb out. So maybe open containers near the walls or near corners or something, if they try to crawl up the wall a little bit and they fall into the container and they can't get out. Tennyson Kingsley, would it be possible to keep exotica, sunburst diving beetles, and Maya cockroaches in a communal paludarium? I think that'd be awesome. Here's my experience with not with exotica. I haven't given exotica a really good, earnest cultivation. Well, I may have. I had a Lydia from Florida that was either exotica or Bradburyiana, but I'm pretty sure it was Bradburyiana. Or is that a species? Bowdiniana, Lydia bowdiniana. And I bred them, and I got the babies to grow to about 3/4 of an inch. But they needed a very specialized setup. It wasn't difficult. It's not difficult to maintain. It was just difficult to make because it was a bunch of sandstone pieces and marine salted water and a bubbler and stuff like that. And I had to make sure they had fresh fish flake food every day, because if the day that I did not feed them fresh fish flakes, they began a slaughter campaign on the babies. They weren't dying, they were just actually eating the babies. And at some point I just ended up with a bunch of gigantic adults, and I would like to try them again. Kai gave me some Lygia that he and Alan had collected, but Kai's setup was a touch lacking. It was very lacking. It was a shoebox with a bunch of ocean water soaked sand, and a bunch of the Lygia didn't survive the drive back to my house. And I think when I got home, there were only 2 that weren't buried in the sand and whatnot. So I would like to try them again. When I go to Florida, I will definitely collect some if we're by the ocean. So the salinity alone rules those out of that combination. Now the sunburst diving beetles, during the first Arizona trip, I collected a bunch of them, and I had the desire to set them up at the bug zoo that I technically still run at U of M Dearborn, but it hasn't been open because of COVID, and the whole building has been closed, and they just started opening it up for weird groups like students that are going to a specific class to enter. And so I put a pair of sunburst diving beetles into a very well planted, very well taken care of 30-gallon tall aquarium that we had as a display there. And I thought, this will be so cool, to have these breeding and all this other stuff. And I ordered 20,000 Daphnia to put into the tank, because I thought, all right, we'll get an established population of Daphnia. The diving beetles will be very happy. This is perfect. I get so many larvae. This is going to be great. So I dumped in my 20,000 Daphnia magna, and I just went about my regular schedule of occasionally coming in to check on things. And that time was 2 weeks after I did all of that work that I then came back to check on things. The beetles had eaten all of the Daphnia. They had eaten all of the Daphnia. There wasn't a sign of larvae. There wasn't a sign of eggs or anything like that. And I just thought, I can't do this. This is dumb. This is dumb. So you could probably keep them alive in a setup with like the Maya if you did like a water feature and whatnot. You just make sure they're very well fed. use larger prey, but just keep in mind you're probably not going to breed them unless you do a very intensive setup, and even then you'd be pioneering raising diving beetles, larvae, pupae, adults in the same setup, because I don't think anybody has done all of the steps together in one enclosure, because the larvae do need to leave the water to pupate. As far as the Maya cockroaches, oh yeah, you could do a paludarium with them. Full stop. You could have all kinds of other fun stuff in with them, like amphipods or the various aquarium shrimp that are being bred in captivity. You know, all the different colors and species. Like, I don't know the exact species. I just know there's like the Rileys and the crystal reds and whatnot. So you could do that. And I am working with a couple species of amphipods and aquatic isopods. It will be a couple of months, I feel, until I know whether or not my setups and intuitions and blah blah, or if these species can breed in the water conditions I give them. So, invertebrate dude. Haha, yeah, Brandon had the same problem with Entomobria nostrigata. I sent him the groups. I purposely sent him, didn't really take off the containers. Often the containers he set them up in, but they've exploded many of the other enclosures he did not. Yeah, it's it's fine. They don't seem to be causing a problem to anything, and I don't generally. I don't know if you were here for this last week or whenever I brought it up, or maybe it was in a customer email, but I feel that when you have bins where the springtails really start to take over, and it seems like the roaches are dying because of it, I feel like the springtails are the canary in the coal mine, and they're telling you that something is out of whack, that is out of preference for the roaches, and that their enumeration is just a sign that conditions are more ideal for them than for the roaches. The Volosia are currently again in that cup. They'll be going into the chamber, and then the desiccation will be run when I get an alarm that the air humidity is starting to climb. Shane says, I've been wanting some of those, the Starburst diving beetles, Sunburst. I think the diving beetles might eat some of them, which as long as prey populations are high enough, that balance out very well. I like that idea myself. I think the main thing is the salinity that's needed for the Ligia. And again, for when I think of things, I'm actually going to go and gonna top this bad boy off, get some more OJ, and continue that thought afterwards. That's good. When some people talk about keeping things, they're talking about, they'd like to just buy a couple of adults or immatures from somewhere and put them in an enclosure and tend to them and let them live out their natural lives. And that's just it. They have no intention of keeping a population going in the enclosure. So usually when I think of things working or not working long term, I think about whether be able to create sustaining populations together long term. And again, there, at least with the diving beetles and the Mayan roaches, the main question is accommodating for the diving beetles' appetites, both as adults and larvae, but also making the enclosure so that the larvae can crawl out of the water to pupate somewhere safely. TJ says, are the striped springtails Entomobria multifasiata? I have those here too and have been trying to establish colonies of them. They're kind of a pain, TBH. I don't know if I tried to identify them. They were quite beautiful for an Entomobria and rather large too. But if you do find a group of them, I would love to give that species that you're finding a shot. again, I have very good success with Springtails when I stick to this mantra of monitoring the humidity for the enclosures, be it just letting them stay out during the winter when it's dry in the house and putting them into the desiccation chamber when it gets too humid. So I feel like I'd have a pretty good shot with them. Let's see. Hello, Shane Madden. Sorry, just saying hello now. Again, I went on a rant, and now I'm going through the chat, clearing things out. TJ says that Ligia can't be kept with freshwater species, and sunburst diving beetles like deeper water than epilamper do. So with the sunburst diving beetles, when we would find them in the wild, they were in the shallow areas in the washes. Like the water, sometimes it was only like an inch deep or even less than that. Didn't really even see them out in like the main channels of the washes. But again, that's not necessarily where they're always hanging out. That may have just been their foraging habitat when, the wash is filled with water when there's heavy rain, then they're forced to forage in those shallower areas. You're just forced to be there because the current's too strong in the main area. And I do remember seeing them, actually, Alan probably remembers seeing them in a couple of pools that Kim had sent us to. But none of the pools, I don't think any of them were deeper than a couple of feet. Maybe, I remember wading through one of them. Some of the less gross-looking ones, maybe. And I want to say we saw larvae in the wild, but memory's hazy of the first Arizona trip, other than all the good times. But yeah, the habitat is like stagnant, or the breeding habitat seems to be these stagnant pools that will fill up in these sort of steep wash areas in the ravines. And and food is probably various ostracods and various other invertebrate larvae there. Tennyson Kingsley, I plan to eventually have a buddy who said he'd build a discounted 140-gallon aquarium for me sometime. Just need to get the space. Yeah, that's a lot of space. Yeah, you can give it a go. There's speaking of diving beetles, it's an interesting conversation route we've taken here. There's a species that breeds in my pond in the backyard. It's an Acilius species, I think. Yeah, Acilius, and if I do just a minimum amount of looking, I can probably find out what species. Has a little stripe at the, it might be mediatus, Acilius mediatus, maybe. Could be semisulcatus. Have to look at the ranges of these and see which one, which they could be. Could be fraternus as well. Could be any of these, I guess. If I had to bet, I'd say it's probably semisulcatus or mediatus, Acilius mediatus. But they pop up in my pond this time of year. The adults do. They obviously fly in from somewhere or crawl in from somewhere. And they're good sized diving beetles. And the larvae, I get the feeling the larvae might be not specialists, but may have a prey preference for tadpoles, because right after the toads bred, was it last year or the year before when I was fighting a bunch of toads? It might have been last year, because I was in communication with somebody who was debating getting some from me, the diving beetles. I remember going out at night and seeing just dozens of these Acilius larvae in the pond, and a couple of them had tadpoles in their jaws, and it just seemed like, yeah, this would make sense to time your babies hatching and being carnivorous when there's a bunch of, kind of unprotected food swimming around. So yeah, that I don't know why I exactly thought of that, but that might be something to try. Let's see. Yeah, I would see that to get the full aesthetic out of a combo Epalampra diving beetle tank, you'd want to have a pretty good deep area so that you can see the beetles really sort of showing off their swimming around and foraging behaviors. I would actually think maybe even a taller enclosure might be the way to go with that sort of stuff, because you have a really deep area in the center, give the adult beetles a lot of places to look around for things, and then very high sides. The Epalampra probably don't really care about the exact floor plan of things as long as there's plenty of hiding places, because they have been found far from water, although they are pre-adapted to live near it and in it. Yeah, TJ, actually, in Lake Placid on the last Florida trip, I put some eye drops in. At Lake Placid on the last Florida trip, I found a huge subadult female Epalampra maya next to one of the lakes we were looking at night, dude, just screwing around, seeing what was there, catching cane toads and stuff like that. But there was a big Epalampra maya on the lakeside. So I don't think they need moving water. And I want to say it was somebody named Alex on Roach Forum that had told me he found them in like an abandoned house or shack underneath like boards or something like that. He found adults. So obviously they're dispersing because Alan has been finding them we've all been finding them in more areas of Florida than in the past than just Arcadia. So they're dispersing. So Tennyson says, I plan to just do a focused aquatic. I was just wondering if Maya's would work well in it. But I'll likely just focus aquatic in like a 30-gallon and do a large one with something else. Yeah, the seeing Epalampras in the wild was... Alan has more experience at this point seeing them in multiple places. But again, that one that was in Lake Placid was just in weedy, moist vegetation alongside of this lake that we were looking at in some suburb area. And before that, they were under the stones on the riverside in Arcadia. Alan was finding Epalampra in roadside ditches. Tennyson says, I was trying to say I've always wanted to do a giant Florida enclosure with anything and everything compatible and just see what I can notice in the environment and see what thrives and what doesn't. Florida is a great ecological cesspool to go out and do that with, too, just because of the virtue of its temperate climate and the indifference of its government and residents. I think that TJ, with the comments about the Epilamprinae there, I think that entire subfamily is probably pre-adapted, or there's probably a shared common ancestral trait to be predisposed to semi-aquatic lifestyles and behaviors. I would maybe even go so far as to say it might be a basal characteristic for that subfamily, because also adding to that, Chuck was telling me when he was in Taiwan that, before I go sounding like a dingus here and make sure, although I swear I confirmed with a picture. Yeah, it was probably Taiwan. He had told me that he was exploring a dried up creek bed area where there were still some pools of water, like very shallow, very stagnant like puddles in this creek bed, and I can't remember if it was mud or limestoney or some sort of rocky, sort of like a stream bank area that he was looking around in. And I want to say he showed me a picture because I remember emphatically confirming the species, but I believe that this habitat, it was an Opisthoplatya orientalis in this dried up stream bank area that he was looking through when he was there. So I think that they I think that it's just a trait that all of them share, and that there's probably more of them that have moved away from being very reliant on water for safety and hydration. But I'm curious to see, and I suppose now I have the numbers to do this. I'm curious to see if dropping some Rhabdoblata rustica and some of the species Borneo in a fish tank with water with rocks sticking out of the water, I'm curious if they'll have behaviors to crawl along the rocks into the water like Epilampra do. So, but anyways, so that's my thoughts on that there. I was gonna say my current Epilampra colony, and I don't think anybody actually keeps them with water, a large source of water for colony propagation. Current Epilampra colony is very large, no water. The bottommost layer of the substrate is always consistently moist. I don't even do a humidity gradient in the substrate. It's just always moist on the bottom substrate layer, and then it's a bunch of dry leaves and some large pieces of bark, and they're doing exceptionally well. And I feel like this is a good setup go-to for a lot of Epilampridae, because it's basically what I'm also doing for species Borneo and for Rhabdoblata rustica. So let me dive into these comments here. Tennyson, I've been doing that simulating the Mississippi River Basin, says Chain. Ecosystems of eastern Iowa. That in itself was expensive and frustrating. I feel like that's going to cost a lot of money, time, mostly mind power, and your setup might fail still. I tried 3 times before the ecosystem began to balance out. Yeah, doing little ecospheres can be tough. The main problem is finding things that have life cycles that you can complete in that space. You don't want things that have planktonic bits where they float downstream, or like with a lot of like bivalves where it'll be, they have a larval thing that needs a specific fish host. It's nice to have things that are live bearing, or also things that aren't on a once a year cycle, things that have multiple broods over the warm season, which is definitely not the norm, especially at higher latitudes for a lot of things. Or if they do have multiple broods per season, they might be migratory, or there might be very, very specific triggers that will get them to abruptly stop reproducing continually indoors. Something. I'm trying to think of a good example of something that's like this. That has a facultative reproductive season. I think some stink bugs are like that. I don't know if it's the native ones though. I think some stink bugs do something like that, but and there's also the also tried and true method of starting your little biosphere, which is just get a bunch of stuff, throw it in, and provide a system input such as light or heat or a food source, and then just let everything fight it out, and you'll end up with something in the end. Something will be adapted to those conditions. It just may not be what you want, unless you can get very lucky, or if you throw enough things in, something will stick. So that's my 2 cents on that. Let me think. There was something else, some other important information that I am definitely forgetting and should not. And I need to wrap up the stream soon to go talk to do that FaceTime with the Canadian fellow. A crucible, says Chain. Oh, so there is a perhaps a curse. I'll start off with the first curse. The first curse is that Aranavega species from California are cursed. We have gone 10, 15 years of 15-ish years of me being in roaches, and no Californian has ever gotten a culture of Aranavega going, or Rima Blad, I guess, too, but we're talking about Aranavega. No roach keeper has gotten, and perhaps nobody in the history of mankind has gotten a colony of Aranavega from the state of California to breed. And it's not just the Aranavaga's fault. It's not just the keeper's fault. There seems to be a curse that originates within the boundaries of the state of California, because people who collect Aranavega from California don't seem to have the motivation to send them out of the state. They don't seem to have the motivation or the drive necessarily to collect a good number of them. They don't seem to have the luck when they do find them, when they are searching for them ardently. And then we have the final thing, which is when they do manage to find some that can be used to create a sustainable population, and they do get into the hands of somebody who's decent with Aranavega, a myriad of factors have gotten in the way to getting an actual colony of that species going. And thus, I have ended up with 2 captive-bred, subadult, virgin female Aranavega from California. When I had ample opportunity last spring, when I received 2 gravid females from California to get the culture going, the container was put on the back burner and deprioritized over the summer when I was doing plant work. And thus, by the time I checked on them and could salvage the ooths that were in the container after the adults had passed, I ended up with a duo of females. And so that sucks. And again, it's just cursed. Other people have tried. TJ has tried. Alan has tried. And it's just very difficult to get just Aranavega out of California. And even when you fight the odds, and you do, apparently there's just a curse that is, let's not hold anybody personally accountable or liable here, but there's just an intrinsic curse. So with that being said, TJ has a friend who found a adult female Aranavega, and TJ had her sent to me, and she arrived in what I thought was what I was certain was on death's door. She couldn't even move her back leg. She was desiccated and all this other stuff. And I was just like, yep, there's the curse again. So, but I also said, we're not going to let this happen. Like, I am not going to just, put her out of her misery and call this another loss. So I put her in an ICU container. I chewed up, TJ, I didn't tell you this in the text, but I chewed up the banana and regurgitated a little bit of it into the cup so that it would be nice and juicy and pre-processed and easily consumable and at a good temperature. And I put her in this container overnight with the banana and the wet paper towel. And I was like, all right, we'll just, if she's alive in the morning, then it's a miracle, and we'll go from there. And morning came, and guess what? She'd perked up, she'd regained function in her back legs, and I just thought, all right, this is happening. This is happening now. And so I've set her up in one of my Air Vega cups and have been very loosely monitoring her. I'm still very concerned about her condition. Is the human saliva not very appetizing? I don't know. Maybe it was the secret ingredient that got her to perk up, or the enzymes in the saliva broke down something in the banana and made it extremely palatable and digestible. But anyways, she's perked up a lot. I don't want to pester her much because I'm still concerned that, I don't want to cause any stress. I feel like, as I told you, TJ, getting a single ooth would be a miracle, and getting multiple ooths would be like a fantasy come true. And so I am trying my best not to screw us over by leaving her alone as much as possible. The last time I checked on her, yesterday or the day before, yes, the legs have begun to work properly, and she is able to burrow, and it really seems as if it looks like nothing could have possibly happened to her. There's no way that I would never believe that she could have perked up this much after getting rehydrated and fed. And so fingers are all crossed. Everything's all crossed that we can get some babies out of her and break the curse of the California Air Vega. So yeah, I do have somebody who is going out in a couple of weeks to go. The person who collected these ones that I have the 2 virgin females of is going out to collect more of them, or is going to at least go and look for them. It's going to cost a couple $100, but it's worth it because they'll have locality information. And I love Air Vega way too much. So that's news. Chris, I will talk a bit about the Weakers in a moment. Should I walk over to the silver door? I wanted to get it nice and masticated, and maybe that's what did it. Maybe it was the special extra bit of love, perhaps. What else was I going to say? We'll talk about Weakers in a second. I was going to give some general Roach updates. Again, I checked on all my roaches, and pretty much everything across the board is doing phenomenal for the first time. For the first time in forever. Was it from Frozen or something? Yes, it is from Frozen. Anyways, for the first time in forever, pretty much every culture is thriving. There are some good asterisks and some bad ones, though. The good asterisks are, I found baby Lanxoblata rudis. I found a baby. I'm sure there's more, which means that the setup is working, and I can rest a bit easier now and actually become more optimistic that the culture will take, and that we will not lose Lanxoblata rudis in culture. And I'm quite happy about that, but we're not out of the woods yet. I will not be completely satisfied until we have an F2, but I mean, if we end up with hundreds of babies, that's pretty good too. Eurycotis decipiens are doing very well. I like that species a lot, so I put them into a big setup and really went over the top with the outfittings and the good quality bark and whatnot. And I was very surprised to find a baby in there, even though they've only been in the setup, I want to say a month and a half. I want to say I put them in there just right before going to Alabama. So it seems very quick to be finding some babies, but I'm not going to complain. So that's good news because I really like them, and I don't think they're too common in the States. Panestia are doing exceptionally well, and Caudelia are doing exceptionally well. I am so ready to get more Panestia and more wood-eating roaches and Salgania. So whenever those are available from anywhere in the U.S., I desperately want them, especially Spatica. I've never had an opportunity to work with Panestia. It was Angusta Spatica. And again, the Ancaudelia, I received received a group of them last February, and they were apparently doing so-so for the person. And over the summer, they dried out a lot. I was so surprised that they had not died when I checked on them. And I put the effort into the setup, really went over the top. And by that, I mean I put the good quality white rotted wood in. And what do you know? They're doing exceptional. And I've got a bunch of babies, bunch of good colonies of both localities of Penestia and Gustapennis cognata that I have. Very happy because in my youth, that was the species that seemed always out of reach. It seemed like the pro-roach species because only a handful of people would ever post about it. And they put beautiful pictures of them on Roach Forum. I just sort of thought to myself, like, oh, I will never have them. Or, when I am an expert one day, maybe, but I will never get there. And then what do you know? It's like, oh, hey, I have like a couple hundred of these now. So I'm very happy about that too. Bad news, the second curse I was going to talk about. It seems like nobody's allowed to have thriving colonies of every Gyna species in culture. All of my Gyna colonies now are in the hundreds or thousands. Even my Cappuccina and Bisanulata. I have every single species of Gyna that's in the U.S. and culture is doing phenomenal for me, but one. My Gyna yellows have just refused to do anything, refused to take off for the last couple of years. I think it was after I moved into the house, they started to go on the decline and they came up a little bit. I sold some I shouldn't have. And now I'm down to one male and seven females of a mix of subadults and adults. So the lucky male. And so I decided I took them out of the tank they were in, put them into a smaller tank. They're now up here in an ICU enclosure, and I'm really hoping that I can save them. So really hopeful there. Panchloris species white. I'm down to 2 males and 3 females. They were doing very well, and then I don't know what could have happened because of how well they were doing and how plump they were looking. And I part of my brain is convinced that maybe they want to be drier than I'm keeping them because they would find the dry pockets of substrate in the enclosure, and I would find all of them in there. So I'm now drying out the enclosure to hopefully get it looking better, in better shape for them. And so there's that too, and I'm distressed about that because it's a species that is possibly also at risk of being lost to culture, and they're one of TJ's favorites, and so I have to try and pull through and get them going because all my other Panchloris are doing exceptional. All of them, from the localities of stuff from Florida, which it seems like there may be another species mixed in there too. The redlands, the adult males are half the size of the Nivea from Tuscaloosa, and it seems too consistent for it to be a fluke. I think that it's a different species, but I will have to get some pictures of the males side by side. And what else is doing very well? All the hissers are doing well. What else did I pull to ICU? I can't think of anything. There maybe more will pop into my mind by next. Perispherus pygmaeus are not doing well at all. There's my alarm for that conversation thing. Let's snooze that right quick. Perispherus pygmaeus are not doing well at all, and I'm pretty sure the culture is going to die out. And I used to do so well with them when I was younger, and so now I think I have to find a way to get a very large number of them, throw them into an enclosure, and keep that Lee effect going, because I think that they didn't do well over the summer. They get too hot or too humid or something like that. And sometimes this like snowball of death with cultures can just, you can snowball, the ball can roll up the hill, and, it can snowball in a good way. When the colony's doing really well, they'll pick up traction as long as you keep taking care of them, et cetera. And then at some point they become, the momentum of the breeding and whatnot just becomes so intense that you pretty much can't kill the colony. And then sometimes it works in the opposite of that, where you have a small number of things, or something goes horribly wrong, or something, and something happens, and the colony will just pick up all this. There'll be this inertia of death, where the colony will just die out. Which reminds me of one other good thing to add to all of this is both of my Daropeltis species are doing well. Both the ones that I had gotten when I was in Alabama, but the Masai Mara, which had sort of a dip in numbers and whatnot, I have plenty enough subadults and emerging into adults that I'm pretty sure that the colony will persist, and I'm got to go downstairs and work on an enclosure for those after the live stream and this conversation I'll be having shortly. So let me run through, do a little bit of eyeballing here. Alan, yeah, not to California, but I am going to Yuma, which is where those big Aranavega are. Roach Kyle hybrids hatching. Chris, really? From the Aranavega eggs. Eric Christensen, culture collapses are heartbreaking. I lost my orange spot assassins, which was devastating. It sucks when you can't put your finger on what you did wrong or what's going wrong so that you can fix it next time. Like with the Paraspherus, I have a general idea, but there's no smoking gun. Or with the Panchlora species white, there's no smoking gun that I can really point at, so I have to just go off of some vague intuitions. So yeah, TJ, seems like you're having an issue with Pygmaeus, but the other species you sent me, Punctatus, is doing very well, and so I won't complain if we end up having Punctatus in culture but not Pygmaeus, but it would be nice to have both of them. So, Chris, I promised I would bring up guinea pigs, and I do have a bit of time. If you would like to snipe me with a question about them now while I look into what I have to have set up for this thing I'm doing, this face-to-face discussion meetup Zoom meeting at 8:30, 3 minutes, if you have any particular questions. Kai told me he knew how to breed Japanese beetles, but he's not here tonight. But apparently it's quite easy. Although I don't see why you do that when you could just raise like a Euphoria or something that's going to be even easier and isn't invasive. But yeah, Weakers really quick. It's been below. We got a frost last night. It's been below freezing a couple of nights, and the guinea pigs I currently have out, my personal guinea pigs, I'm watching my friend Brandon. They're keeping them for him until he moves into a house or apartment or whatever. But I have two full-size adults, one juvenile size that was born around January or February, and then 4 that were born right before Easter, the day before Easter. So that's the range of sizes I had. And with a small wooden shelter in the enclosure, even with the temperatures that we got, they've been fine. If you go to the non-pet guinea pig groups on Facebook, at least when I was still on Facebook, I would go to those occasionally, people who are raising them, specifically just for meat reasons. Plenty of people would talk about how they would have babies born in the dead of winter, and as long as they were in a sheltered location, they were fine and healthy and whatnot. They didn't experience any losses. And they don't appear uncomfortable either. That's the other thing. They seem quite, as long as you're not working with like a skitty pig or a hairless. So for housing them during the summer, during the winter, I have big totes that I keep different groups of them in, different pairs. And during the spring through fall, when I keep them outside, I have a large pen. It's like maybe 5 feet by 7 feet, maybe 8 feet, that I have a small wooden hiding thing, big water bowl, food bowl for some pellets if I feed that to them, a corner where I put the hay, and they will just get all kinds of weeds I pull around the yard, bladder campion, barnyard grass, maybe some lamb's quarters, violets, asters, just a weird mix of whatever I find. I avoid things that I know are toxic to humans, and they're also really good at not eating things that are bad for them as well. So the end goal is to have a very large guinea pig farm with several thousand, because they can be raised sustainably for as food for my future dogs and for the future homestead as well. It's I would like to get some of those Cooey genetics for the size involved eventually, but it's kind of hard to do in the States because not a lot of people have them. It's very hard to get them from the people who do have them. So I might even have to go to Florida one day, bum around a bunch of like slummy pet stores and look for people. Sometimes they get Cooey in there from people, from suppliers from Central America and the Caribbean. Again, I hate to wrap it up because this has been a really good stream, but I do have a prior obligation that I must tend to. So with that being said, thank you everybody for making this a wonderful, delightful stream. I look forward to streaming next week when it's warmer. Hopefully I'll have some more good news about various cultures and projects. We are getting near to, some eggs. Let me give this a quick look. You know how to pupate them or if they cannibalize each other as larvae. I will direct you to Kai for that, although, like I said, he's not here. Feel free to shoot me an email asking about that because, again, there are some similar-sized alternatives to Japanese beetles that look very similar without the shininess, such as Euphoria species that you may find useful and easier since those eat compost. So shoot me an email and we can discuss that. So anyways, have a great night, everybody. And as always, may your cultures be ever bountiful. See you next week.